Welcome to Leadership Bites with myself, your host, Guy Bloom. This is a leadership podcast where I have conversations with colleagues, I chat with guests, and sometimes there'll be just me talking. You can connect with me at livingbrave.com, and when you enjoy the episode, subscribe and please tell everyone. Karolin, fantastic to have you on this episode of Leadership Bites. Welcome.
Thank you, Guy. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm really happy that you are too, and people that listen to the podcast must know exactly what I'm going to say next, which is I know who you are, because obviously we've got to this point where you're actually on the episode, but introduce yourself to the audience.
Great. I'm Karolin Helbig, and I'm leadership consultant, independent leadership consultant, focusing on topics like emotional intelligence and psychological safety.
And I'm really keen about this topic of psychological safety at the moment. It's one that I have a lot of conversations about, and I want to get onto your book as well and talk about the Psychological Safety Playbook and some of the things that you want people to understand from that. And I think we can have a fabulous conversation. Just to give people a little bit of context and background to you, because I think understanding what you have to say is one thing, but understanding the root of the experience and where that's coming from is hugely valuable. So just give us a sense, Karolin, of what were the stepping stones of your career that's got you to where you are today.
Yeah, I'm a scientist by background. I always wanted to understand what's the nature of human beings. So I studied human biology, and after my PhD in human genetics, I wanted again to kind of enlarge my horizon and joined McKinsey as a top management consultant. However, at some point, I realized what's really at the core of effective leadership. And I saw a lot of teams, a lot of clients, different countries. But what's at the core of leadership are really basic human skills and capacities. So I started out as an independent leadership consultant, really focusing on these core human skills. And that's what I'm focusing now on: emotional intelligence, mindset, collaboration, and now psychological safety.
So let's jump into this topic of psychological safety. And you've co-authored a book, that's correct?
Yes, absolutely. My co-author is Minette Norman in California.
So Minette Norman couldn't be with us just because of just the timings and everything that we were trying to achieve. So I'm sure she'll be listening to this with an assessment sheet, seeing if we've hit all the right things. But we'll see. But it'd be great then to what was the catalyst for the book? Because I've written a book, and it always seems like a good idea at the start. And then, you get halfway in, and very often, you really have to be motivated to get to an end. So what was the motivation? What did you want people to understand from it and get from it?
Yeah, the motivation behind the book. And funny enough, we didn't kind of at the start decided let's write a book together. It was more both of us, Minette and I, we are independent leadership consultants, focusing on psychological safety and really helping clients to accelerate psychological safety in their organizations. And that was the reason why we took part in a certification program based on Amy Edmondson's methodology. So Amy Edmondson, author of Fearless Organization and really the leading researcher about psychological safety. And Minette and I, we both, in our work with clients, had this experience that there was a lot of material about the why of psychological safety, why it's so important, what it is. However, material around how do I actually do it? How do I cultivate it in my organization? How can I really bring it into my teams? The how was kind of missing. And that was for us the reason to start our collaboration and really develop the material for our clients that we missed. So we created the material we wished was already present. And first of all, we thought, okay, let's develop kind of a little booklet or something. We didn't say, let's write a book. At some point, it turned into a book, and that's now where we are, ending up with a book which we didn't envision to write at the beginning.
Well, that's nice. Very organic.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's a beautiful thing. I remember sitting trying to get the spaghetti out of my brain onto the paper. So I probably should have done it the way you did it. But that's a mental note for self for the second one. So let's look at a couple of things if we can do. I get asked this question, Guy, psychological safety. Now, I get asked in a very particular way when it's somebody quite senior. When it's somebody in HR, they've generally got a very good understanding of it, and we all have our kind of particular viewpoints, but they get the topic. Senior people at that board level have often, they may have had some learning on it, but they see it in two ways, I think. One is the intellectualization of course. Now that you've said what it is, and we will get that clarity from your perspective in just a moment, but intellectually, of course, I understand it. But then there is the reality but we work in a very commercial space. And there's a very fine line between what might be considered forthright or what might be considered aggressive. There's a line between being very driven and incredibly focused to being bullish and maybe even a little bit of a bully. So this balance of one person's interpretation versus another, I think, gives quite a lot of worry to some people, because we don't want to turn into a kibbutz, but at the same time we also want to have people that are psychologically safe. So that's that kind of starting point that often I get asked about, but this is now going to be my interpretation of things. So when somebody says to you, Karolin, psychological safety, exactly what is it? Knowing that could almost be the spectrum of where they might be coming at it from, of course, I'm all over that, all the way through to I might even be a little bit suspicious of it. How do you offer it to people?
Yeah, thanks for this question. And I think you mentioned a very important point, the intellectualization. And sometimes that's also something I observe. And sometimes it's kind of you're dismissing a little bit what psychological safety is all about, because you're only talking about the concept. So I'm glad you're asking this kind of basic question. What is psychological safety? And sometimes maybe people have the feeling, oh, it sounds like an academic concept, right? Something which we can discuss on an intellectual basis, but which doesn't really have impact on what we are doing, how we are interacting day in and day out. And what we want to do, also in our book, someone said in a review on Amazon, we really demystify psychological safety. So important is to know psychological safety may sound like an academic term, however, it's a basic human experience. Right? We all know this. We know it, how it feels to be part of a team where psychological safety is missing, how awful this is. We really have to weigh every word and so on. We constantly think, oh, what impression do I make? What do the others think of me? And so on. And we all know how good it feels to be part of a team where psychological safety is present, and that maybe the different levels of psychological safety. So it's not an academic concept, it's rather a human experience. And sometimes it's linked to very much a human feeling. However, what our book is all about are behaviors, are the actions we can take. So even though it may be a feeling, do I feel safe or not? Do I not feel safe? There are actions which can be taken to increase this atmosphere of psychological safety. And this is what we focus on in our book. And we offer really a broad range of very concrete and tangible actions every one of us can do, not only the leader, but also the team members, to create this atmosphere of psychological safety.
So let's delve into that then. What are the things that a leader can do to reinforce, implement, create a psychologically safe environment? Because I think that's the key thing. Okay, intellectually I might understand what it is, but what can I do at a tangible level that would actually help me reinforce or move that forward?
Yeah, and there are many things you can do, and we organize it in our book in a very structured way. So maybe I give you a little bit the overview and then an example how this could look like. So in our book, we cover really the 5 kind of key areas where we think are the biggest levers to increase psychological safety in your environment. First, communicate courageously. Second, master the art of listening. And third, manage your reactions. And fourth, embrace risk and failure. And fifth, design inclusive rituals. So these are kind of the big chapter, we call it plays. And within each of these plays, we offer tangible actions, 5 actions in each play. How could that look like? Let me give you an example for communicate courageously. We don't mean this big courage, this kind of heroic act. It's more about the small things you can do, which nevertheless take a lot of courage to do. So, for example, as a leader, ask the question in a team meeting, for example, what am I missing? Just this one question can change a lot. And why is it so courageous? It's courageous because it's really going away from this traditional leadership model. As a leader, you know it all, you know the direction, you know all the answers. You are not showing up vulnerably with things you don't know. And if you have the courage to ask, what am I missing? This might be easy and simple, right? However, it's really going deep into your kind of your attitude as a leader. You are more humble than traditionally leaders are because you know what I'm seeing is not the whole truth. I need others to complement and add their perspectives. So you're kind of committing to this openness, vulnerability, humbleness, inviting others to contribute their perspectives. And I'm convinced, and I've seen this working, that small actions can have big effect. In this one example, what am I missing? I just had a discussion last week with a client in a big company, automotive company here in Germany, and he said he ran a very first pilot and just inviting the pilot group, the team leader, to ask this question. And he was blown away by the impact it had because the meetings, which used to be a little bit, I don't know, unproductive, unsatisfying, the feeling that not all ideas were really brought to the table, suddenly changed. Suddenly, the nature of these meetings changed just by asking this one question: what am I missing?
It seems obvious, but at the same time, it's one of those things that I often think about at interviews when people say what they are, but then they get busy and actually knowing what to do and then actually being the person that takes the time to do it is quite different. So we say, yes, of course I'm inclusive, of course I pay attention to people, of course I'm very curious, but then we get hugely busy and we almost want to just transact. So having the craft or the habit or the diligence to actually just ask that very simple question. But I'm also interested in, the question is a great question, but also there's the receiving of it. And what I notice is that sometimes people can go on a program, they can learn a great phrase, but actually the manner of their receiving, is there anything I'm missing? And they may get curious answers, they may get challenging answers, and the way that they receive it can actually turn people off answering that question, or answering those kind of questions. Again, yes, we are asked, but you've got to be very careful how you respond, kind of thing. So I'm just also intrigued into how you talk to people about not just the actions of having a good response or a good question, but actually what people need to see maybe around the person to not just know that they've done something transactional, but they actually can believe it and they are actually safe.
Yeah, absolutely. All the actions which we suggest might be kind of very simple and easy. However, they are deeply rooted in a certain attitude, in a certain mindset. So if you,
Yes.
as a leader, ask the question, what am I missing? Of course, you need to be committed to hear and really carefully listen to the answers, right? And mastering the art of listening is our second big chapter. And here, why do we spend a whole chapter about listening? Aren't we listening all the time? And the honest answer is we are not really often. We are not really listening, right? We are distracted. We think we know what's coming. We prepare our own response already. Whatever, we are not fully focused on understanding the other person. And that's key to really to really work in a much more productive way, to commit to be fully focused and to understand before you respond. So if you as a leader ask the question, what am I missing? It's absolutely required that you commit to carefully understanding what's coming up. And I love that guy that you're referring to, how does it feel to be on the receiving end of this question, what am I missing? Funny thing, last week I was guest in a podcast, and at the end of the podcast, the host asked me the question, what am I missing, or what are we missing? And it was such a wonderful feeling to be asked this question, and then a pause and room and space to to really explore things, thoughts coming up. So as a leader, absolutely crucial that you train your listening muscle.
It's a fascinating conversation to be had around this, which is the intellectualization of it is quite simple. I could send you the slides on what psychological safety is, and you could read it and you could understand it. But actually, I think I like a lot of what you're saying there. The willingness to make space and to exercise the muscle, and to actually, if you ask that question and you don't receive it well, then you've probably reinforced the context that people think they're actually operating in. But actually, if you want to create something different, then you've got to do something different. And that doesn't mean agreeing with people, but it does mean ensuring that they feel heard. And I think that's what I think I'm hearing from you is, making the time that if you're going to ask that question, be sure that you respond by listening with curiosity. That seems to be very, very powerful.
Yeah, very important point, Guy, that Anna maybe highlighting again, understanding doesn't mean agreeing, right? And so often we mix this up. But once we really disentangle these two, we can allow ourselves to listen much more deeply, because it doesn't mean we have to give up our perspective, right? But just for a moment, we put aside our perspective, our truth, our conviction, and commit to fully understanding the other person. And then later we can come back to our perspective and have a much more productive conversation around that. And what you are also touching upon is managing your reactions, right? So if you as a leader ask, what am I missing? And then commit to listening, then maybe you might hear something which is not comfortable, right? And how you respond then in this situation is absolutely make or break for, can be make or break for psychological safety. Because if you as a leader hear something and you're triggered in an automatic reaction, and maybe you lash out at somebody, what you do is, what you try to build up psychological safety, you are now destroying, right? It's like trampling over the flower. Psychological safety is really something like cultivating, like in a garden, day by day in and day out, and it needs time, and it's so easy to destroy in a moment. So it's absolutely crucial as a leader to manage your reactions in a skillful way. That's an essential element of emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and self-management. So the moment you get triggered, that you cultivate this habit of, oh, I notice I'm triggered, and I don't react automatically. Instead, I pause, I take a deep breath, and then choose a response which is more productive than just, I don't know, lashing out or something. You can even say, oh, this feedback or this comment hit me harder than I expected. I need a moment to take this in.
I like that a lot. That kind of gestalt, giving people feedback and giving them your feelings in the moment, but in a way that is very much geared around allowing yourself to accept that your vulnerability doesn't make you vulnerable, which is often a big step for people in senior roles to be able to say, wow, that's a powerful question, or actually, that curiosity that you have, that's actually, that's quite challenging to me, or whatever that phrase is, that willingness to not have to be strong and that ability to show that it's having an impact and it's meant something to me, but that doesn't make me less. It actually makes me stronger and gives you a permission then when I offer you feedback to accept it and to offer it and to say how you're feeling about it. So this doesn't even mean that we have to agree with each other, but if we acknowledge what's going on for each other.
Absolutely.
And that seems to be what I'm hearing.
Yeah, absolutely, Guy. And I love how you put it. And vulnerability so often is misperceived as weakness, right? That's the traditional leadership model. And you can be both. You're vulnerable and strong, vulnerable and confident and grounded. And it's so important to be both, showing up openly with failures, learnings, vulnerabilities, and at the same time manage them in a skillful way, which makes you even stronger. So, yeah.
No, fantastic. And I was just thinking of a conversation I had with, because you and I are in very similar spaces in terms of the work that we do. And I was speaking to an HR director that said, one of the things about psychological safety, Guy, is that nobody should feel threatened or upset. And, I had a pause there for a moment and I thought, this is an interesting balance, because nobody should be threatened, but you might feel under threat. Nobody should be made to feel upset, but you might get upset. The thing about psychological safety, I think, is that what makes some people fear it might be the wrong word, but nervous about embracing it, is the sense that sometimes I think when it's offered in training, it's offered in such a way where it's all beanbags, happy smiles, and there's this wonderful environment, this nirvana. But actually, and I'd love to hear, your reaction to this, is I think psychological safety means we can have the truly honest conversations in an elegant and crafted way, showing our vulnerability with each other. But let's also understand that if part of that conversation is that your performance isn't very good or something along those lines, you may walk out feeling under threat because you've got to make some changes. But that doesn't mean that you've been threatened. And I just wonder if that balance where you notice that actually some people can be a little bit nervous of it because they think it will take away their ability to have the conversations that they need to have.
Yeah, absolutely. My experience is that there are kind of maybe two main misconceptions about psychological safety, which stands in the way of for people to really embrace the concept and really the actions to foster it. And the one misconception is that psychological safety means lowering performance standards. And this doesn't need to be the case. Actually, psychological safety and performance standards are kind of two independent dimensions, and you want your team to be in the upper right corner of this matrix. So high standards and high psychological safety, that's where the performance is. So one misconception, lowering performance standards, and the other misconception is it means being nice all the time, agreeing all the time, nothing bad ever happens. And of course, this is not the case, right? We are in real life, we are in real existing companies, things happen, crises continue to happen, maybe accelerating even, layoffs and so on. So psychological safety doesn't mean that nothing bad ever happens. It means we deal with it in a different way, in a more skillful and more kind of on a better level. So we observe what's happening. We are not reacting automatically and entering kind of one reaction, the other reaction, and we enter a fight or an unproductive back and forth. However, we manage to find a level where we and kind of a more meta level where we deal with our own triggers, challenges in a more skillful way, and can deal with those of the other one the same way. So kind of we are evolving our emotional intelligence.
I think that's good for people to hear, that actually psychological safety doesn't mean that you're having to become less. Actually, what it will do will be allow you to do more. One of the observations I have when I'm dealing with this topic in one-to-one coaching or training programs is actually, since embarking on this concept of psychological safety, Guy, what I've noticed is I'm having much more powerful conversations. I'm having much more genuine conversations. We're actually getting, that Johari model with the open and the hidden, the stuff that actually we may hide from each other because we don't really want to talk about it because of the anxiety around it. Those things are now manifesting into an open space. That's improving the potential of our relationship. But it comes with somebody breaking the cycle or venturing into this new territory. So I think that's to actually say, when you do this, your performance will improve.
Yeah, absolutely, Guy. And so important. That's actually the beauty of psychological safety. The more you have it, the more you can have those tough conversations, which we tend to avoid. The more open and transparent we can speak with each other, because we know this doesn't destroy our relationship, right? So we can be more open and candid and honest with each other without hurting each other.
So for leaders that are listening to this, or for people that are working with leaders, if you were going to offer that, if you're going to bring this to your people, especially if it's a concept that is unknown to them, or they've vaguely heard about it, or they have a caricature of it and they haven't really done the work on it, what's your advice, counsel for bringing the topic into a team and an environment?
I would encourage everyone to really move away from this intellectualizing into the real doing. And that's what our how-to guideline, our book is all about. And it's not only playbook by title, it's really meant as a playbook. So what we offer are 25 very concrete actions, like the one asking the question, what am I missing? And invitation is for everyone to go ahead and pick one that resonates with you and then put it into action. So not staying in the thinking about psychological safety and having intellectual discussions, but really starting your first experiment, picking one of the actions we offer in the book, and see what happens if you put it into practice. And even though when discovering what we cover in the book, the 5 big chapters, I stick to the order in the book. However, our book is not meant to be read from A to Z. So you can start anywhere, pick anything. And that's the beauty of the book. We wanted to write a very short and approachable book, which you can really use as a guideline without big time commitment. So you can open it on any page, see what's there, try it out, get in the habit of really doing things which help psychological safety to grow, and see what happens. And maybe you need to adopt it so that it fits really your leadership style. I'm convinced that it's not one size fits all, right, in every respect. So see how you want to adopt it so that you feel comfortable using this, and then come into the habit of really doing little steps every day.
When people struggle in this space, what do you experience as the hurdles that they come across?
Sometimes, human beings are often resistant to change, right? Because we're conservative. Our brain wants that we keep doing what we always did and so on. So we need to kind of overcome this conservative limitation. And what I see really helps if you embrace this idea of, okay, it's an experiment. It doesn't mean from now on I commit to do this every time in the future forever. It's really playful. And that's what we want to bring to this concept, which often feels a little bit heavy, right? It's an academic, intellectual concept and it feels heavy. Do little things. And that's what I experience people struggle with, that they feel, okay, this big concept needs big changes from my side. And what we want to invite readers to is, no, it doesn't need to be big. Let's start small, and small things can really have a big effect.
I think that's important with something like this, that yes, you've got the ability to embrace it at any level you like, but actually don't, if you're doing something more than you were yesterday, then you're doing more than most people, right? And I like that idea. I noticed that one of the things I have noted with regards to the book is a question I had, which is how leaders can build inclusive rituals into everyday interactions. And it'd be good just to understand, I think, how, if you are going to take this past, read the book and try one bullet point, but actually you want to really try and embed and create change over a period of time, this idea of rituals, and maybe even bringing to life what rituals are for people, but how to build inclusive rituals into everyday interactions. That'd be interesting just to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and in this part of the book, we are focusing a lot on meetings because meetings make up such a big part of our working life, right? And that's where often we see inclusion is not yet really happening. So, if you reflect on the typical meetings you have, what you often see is that not all people contribute. So often there are one or two or three participants who are dominant and who are really taking up the largest part of the airtime. And then you have team members who stay quiet and who are rarely contributing to the discussion. So this is really where we need to change things and really make sure that everyone has their voice, everyone can contribute, and that we in a team can really benefit from all the rich ideas which are in the heads, but often not spoken loud and not put on the table. So one idea is to really have a facilitator in each meeting and stop having larger meetings without any facilitator. And the facilitator has certain task, for example, to monitor teams is to commit airtime and see, are there team members who stay quiet, and invite them into the discussion. For example, what we also suggest and what we saw works well in different to certain ground rules. For example, no one speaks twice before anyone speaks. Everyone speaks once before anyone speaks twice. So to make sure everyone is heard before those who tend to be more dominating take up the word again. So really being deliberate about how you facilitate or how you run team meetings is a very essential part, and we all can increase inclusiveness there.
So, in terms of getting access to the book, Karolin, where would people look to find out more about that, or anything around this topic that you think people should have a look at?
Yeah, so the book is called the Psychological Safety Playbook, Lead More Powerfully by Being More Human. The subtitle is really kind of a core message of the book. And we have a website for the book, same name, the Psychological Safety Playbook.com. And you can find a lot of free resources for download there. So, for example, an overview of the 25 actions. So please go ahead and check out the website. We also have a newsletter. And the book is available on all at all common retailers, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and so on. You find the links on our website as well. And Minette and I, we are both very active on LinkedIn. So we love to engage in discussions and dialogues. So please find us on LinkedIn and engage in discussions around psychological safety. We are both very passionate about this topic.
Well, I'll put those links in the description. I'm just looking at Amazon, and there's 111 5-star reviews, so they can't all be friends. So there's got to be. So that's great to know. I always think when there's only 2 and they're 5 stars, you go, well, that's somebody's mum and dad. But after that, it's got to have been read by other people. So that's fantastic.
Yes, it's only it's only 2 months ago that the book was launched, so we are really pleased about the
Fantastic.
resonance. And also Amy Edmondson provided a great endorsement, Seth Godin, and so on. So we are really pleased that the gap we felt about the how-to of psychological safety was really kind of filled with our book.
That's perfect. I had Amy on the podcast some time ago, and she was absolutely marvellous. So, one of those people that sometimes you meet people from a distance, or you see people from a distance, and then when you meet them, I've experienced a kind of deflation. But actually, with Amy, I was yes, I can absolutely see you are, equal to your brand and your status, so she was an absolute joy to have on. So listen, I will bring us to a close, Karolin. I'm just always aware to the fact that these topics could, I could talk you to the point where you go, Guy, I really must go now. But I think just to keep it at a sensible listening time, you've been an absolute star, really clear about what you want to say, a great message with real clarity. I think the book, The Psychological Safety Playbook, is something that we should all check out. On that note, stay on just to make sure everything loads up. And thank you so much, Karolin, for being on this episode of Leadership Bites.
Thank you so much, Guy. It had been a pleasure to be here.
That's it, so I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please share so others get to hear about us, and subscribe so you keep up to date on new episodes. Also visit livingbrave.com if you want to connect with me and find out more about executive coaching, team effectiveness and changing culture. Oh, and of course you can buy my book Living Brave Leadership on Amazon. So on that note, see you soon.